We all chase after comfort. It's that warm, safe feeling of knowing what's coming next. But what if that very thing we're all running towards is actually the biggest wall standing between us and who we could become? Okay, let's get into this because it's a really fascinating idea.
Yeah, I know, that sounds a little harsh, right? But seriously, think about it. The greatest thinkers, the most innovative entrepreneurs, they've understood this for ages. Any kind of progress, whether it's personal or for all of humanity, is just, well, it's uncomfortable. It means you have to stretch, probably fail a few times, and step out into the great unknown. And that's the real kicker, isn't it? If being comfortable feels so natural, so right, then how on earth could it be a trap? Well, to figure that out, we've got to be really clear about what we're talking about when we say comfort.
So let's start right there. Let's unpack this whole concept. What exactly is the comfort zone, and what's this weird paradox that it creates in our lives?
Think of it like this. It's your daily commute, the job skills you've got down pat, the easy conversations with friends. There's zero stress, no anxiety. It's a space where you feel like you have everything under control. And honestly, that's exactly what makes it so incredibly tempting and so dangerous.
Because here's the deal you're making, whether you realize it or not. Every single time you stick to the familiar, you're passing up an opportunity to learn something new, to get a little bit tougher, to see what else is out there. That little hit of short-term ease, well, it adds up over time and can leave you with a huge sense of what if down the road.
Now, I want to be clear, this isn't just you being lazy or lacking willpower. Oh no, there are some really powerful forces deep inside our own psychology, even our biology, that are basically designed to keep us right where we are. Psychologists have a great name for this, the hedonic treadmill. It's this idea that we all have a kind of happiness set point, like a thermostat. And no matter what happens in our lives, something amazing or something terrible, we have this uncanny knack for eventually ending up right back at that same baseline level of happiness. And this is where it gets really wild. There is a classic study that looked at two groups of people, lottery winners and people who had had accidents that left them paralyzed. You'd think their lives would be polar opposites in terms of happiness, right? Well, a year after these massive life events, both groups reported almost identical levels of happiness. It just goes to show our emotional system is built for stability, not for staying on a high forever. And that pullback to our stable, comfortable baseline is incredibly strong. So, if even winning the lottery won't make us happy forever, what's stopping us from chasing real growth? Well, it pretty much boils down to one word: fear. We get in our own way. We're terrified of failing. We feel like a fraud who's going to get found out any minute. That's imposter syndrome. Or sometimes we just crave control so much that we'd rather orchestrate our own small failures than risk a big, surprising one. And sometimes, if we're being really honest, deep down we just don't think we deserve anything more.
And that is the connection. These fears are the fuel that keeps that hedonic treadmill going. They stop us from taking the risks that might actually lead to lasting change, trapping us in this endless loop of just trying to feel okay for a little while.
And hey, if you think having all the material comfort in the world is a solution, think again. Research actually found that teenagers in wealthy suburbs can report higher levels of anxiety and depression than kids in inner-city neighborhoods. It's a pretty shocking reminder that a life without any real challenges isn't a happy one. A little discomfort, it turns out, is a key ingredient for becoming a resilient person.
Okay, so our brains are basically wired to keep us comfortable, but we now know that leads to stagnation. So what do we do about it? Well, it turns out some ancient philosophers were wrestling with this exact same problem more than 2,000 years ago. So you have this guy, Seneca, a Stoic philosopher who was also one of the richest men in the entire Roman Empire. And what did he argue for? Something he called voluntary discomfort. You have to ask, why would a man who had everything tell people to practice having nothing? Because he knew. He knew that by intentionally taking on small hardships, we could train ourselves, we could toughen our minds for the big ones that life is guaranteed to throw at us. It's like building up an immunity to bad luck.
And look, this isn't about being some kind of monk or punishing yourself. The modern ways to do this are actually pretty simple. Taking a cold shower, eating a really basic meal, hitting the gym when you really don't want to. These little controlled doses of discomfort do two amazing things. First, they expand our ability to handle struggle. And second, they totally reset our appreciation for the simple comforts we take for granted every single day. Now, what's so cool is how this ancient wisdom lines up perfectly with a totally modern framework from the world of leadership that helps us find that perfect sweet spot for growth.
Okay, first, we have to get this distinction right, because it's super important.
The goal is not to create a workplace or a life full of fear. The goal is to create psychological safety, which is not the same thing as a comfort zone. Psychological safety means you feel safe enough to take a risk, to speak up, to be challenged, even to fail. The comfort zone, on the other hand, is about being safe from all of those things. Big difference.
And Harvard professor Amy Edmondson mapped this out perfectly. Look, if you have high safety but really low standards, you're in the comfort zone. It's nice, but nothing ever changes. Low safety and low standards? Welcome to the apathy zone, where nobody gives a darn. Now, crank up those standards but keep the safety low? That's the anxiety zone, where everyone is terrified to make a single mistake. But that sweet spot, the magic happens right here, in the learning zone. High psychological safety and high standards. Think about the best team you've ever been a part of. I bet you felt safe enough to suggest a crazy idea, but you were also pushed to do your absolute best work. That's the learning zone.
So really, the whole point is this. We shouldn't be running from discomfort. We should be trying to create an environment where that feeling of being challenged actually leads to growth. That productive tension, that's the engine of progress.
Okay, so this all sounds great, but how do we actually do it? How do we take that first, terrifying step outside of our own personal comfort zone?
All right, here are 4 really simple, practical steps. First, challenge your own fears. Ask yourself, is this obstacle actually real, or is it just a story my anxious brain is telling me? Second, try a 30-day challenge. Pick one thing and just do it. Force yourself up that learning curve. Third, find a role model. Find someone who's already where you want to be and figure out how they did it. And last, and this one is by far the most important, just start. Seriously, don't wait for the perfect moment. It's not coming. Just begin, and you can figure out the rest as you go. It's like the leadership coach Marshall Goldsmith always says, the skills and the mindset that brought you to where you are today are not the ones that are going to get you to the next level. To get there, you have to be willing to leave the safety of here.
And this doesn't have to be some huge, dramatic leap. It's about one small choice. So I want to ask you, what's one small, slightly uncomfortable thing you can do today that your future self will look back and thank you for? Maybe it's finally having that tough conversation, or signing up for that class you've been eyeing, or heck, maybe it's just taking that cold shower.
I just want to leave you with this last thought from our friend Seneca. The fear we feel, the anxiety we build up in our heads about stepping outside our comfort zone, it is almost always worse than the reality of actually doing it. The discomfort is temporary, the growth is permanent.